them refurbished occasionally. Some of those European houses the old ones are very solidly built. But generally, the modern architecture is going to be built to a price. So you're going to say, look at that wonderful price without telling you that they skimp just that little bit to get that wonderful price for you. Yeah, well, the old Donald Duck wasn't too bad. This was I suppose the best story was, yeah, the first one. So this is getting to be one of Donald's grander adventures, I suppose. And of course, you know, if it's got anything supernatural, it turns out to be hokey. Well,
Uh,
Barks was from an era due to the lack of other entertainments. People would play games like haunted houses and stuff like that. Did you get that when you were a kid?
no.
Yeah, yeah. So too many distractions today. Too much entertainment. I still saw a bit of it when I was a kid. You know, any abandoned house immediately became a haunted house. The kids were, you know, playing dares on who would go inside and stuff like that. Okay, he's looking for a treasure, find some cash. I think Donald Trump was a bit like that a couple of years ago, wasn't he? His empire was just struggling. Needed to find some liquidity. Okay, so the caretakers are set up. And Barks didn't care too much for historical accuracy as regards the armour.
Yeah.
He was, you know, going on about, yeah, like different eras, like 1057. So that style of plate armour only began to appear towards the end of the 1300s
Mm.
and very much in vogue in the 15th century and the 16th century.
Mm.
Okay, they found the treasure. That was pretty easy. Yeah, so it's all very convincing.
Mm.
But Barks has to have a rational explanation. He's not going to normally go with anything supernatural.
Mm.
Blowing my nose. The colds are getting a bit more severe these days. I didn't notice colds as frequently or as bad before COVID.
Ah.
Unless something in my diet sucks. I was looking at a bit of Dr. Gumfrey's stuff. It's a little bit interesting. You tried him out?
No. No.
He's always doing ads on YouTube. He was recommending avocados. An avocado a day. He thought apples were bad because the modern apples have been uh, cultivated to have such a heavy amount of fructose in them.
Yeah.
He's claiming fructose. It's not a really great one for humans.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that. I try to limit fruit.
Yeah, I thought apples might be cool, but from what he's saying, they're probably themselves not so desirable. He gave a good mark to kiwi fruit
Hmm.
and recommended to eat the rough outsides as well. The kiwi fruit was a cultivar from the Chinese gooseberry. Well, okay, Donald is in the wrong place at the wrong time yet again. So it creates a mystery, but you know, when you're used to Donald Duck, you realise it's not going to be a supernatural answer. Yeah, well, it said in the it said this was a thing where Donald's gone on an adventure where Uncle Scrooge is the instigator, and Uncle Scrooge can usually provide a more interesting scenario. Otherwise, Donald would have to explain how he gets to foreign countries when he's perpetually broke.
Sure.
They don't show. I don't think they showed the travel to Scotland in this one. In a lot of the earlier comics, he's showing the means of travel. So, did you look through this one this week?
Yeah. Yeah, the second appearance of Scrooge McDuck. Yeah, you're right. He turned out to be a very efficacious character.
Yeah, that's in the commentary at the end. Yeah, Uncle Scrooge is the instigator,
Mm,
providing adventures for Donald.
yeah. Yeah, Barks is at pretty much this is the peak of his powers at this point. Very nice, fluid cartooning.
Nobody else here. They must be at the barricades.
Hmm. Not sure how popular the Carl Barks comics are going to be.
Yeah, I'd sort of regard his backgrounds are very interesting. His terrain images and that. They're not uh, hasn't gone for a world of detail, but what he does put in is rather good, I think. All right, secret passage.
Mhm. When I was reading these as a kid, I never imagined Scrooge talking with a Scottish accent.
Oh, okay. So what does he do in the cartoons? He's got a Scottish accent, has he?
Yeah, in cartoons he does have a Scottish accent, yeah. Alan Young voices him.
Alan Young, he was the guy out of Mr. Ed, was he?
I
Or
don't know.
somebody else? Alan
Mhm.
Young. Oh, okay. Yep. Guy out of Mr. Ed. He was also in the Time Machine. So
Yeah.
born in Northumbria, UK, 1919, died in 2016 in Los Angeles. So you haven't seen Mr. Ed, the sitcom from the 60s?
Not extensively.
That's right. I think in the Time Machine he did a Scottish accent or an Irish accent, some sort of Gaelic accent.
Mhm.
You must remember the movie, the first one, the was it George Pell Time Machine?
I remember.
If
Rod
that
Taylor.
machine does what you see it does, destroy it. I was pretty much blown away by that movie when I was a little kid. I was desperate to see it again, so it must have been uh, on the psychological level a very powerful film. Well, he explains at the end the invisible spray he used didn't quite work on the bones.
Yeah, these comics are just so very, very charming and just so well done. Excellent comics.
That's my tail there. Okay, yeah. Interesting end with Donald Duck, half invisible. Short. And there are two old crows.
Yeah, and of course he was working anonymously. There were no credits. Nobody knew who he was.
Oh, rightio, oh, rightio. So they haven't written his name in. All right.
Nobody knew his name. And he wasn't wasn't interested. He was okay with that.
Now I was looking at the notes in the end, said he worked for Disney in the late 30s to early 40s and was a bit dissatisfied.
Yeah.
And the comic approached him and offered him, sort of like something similar to full creative control. So he pretty much had what he wanted as an artist with the comics. Well, as you look at that little thing there with the houses next to the lake, I'm sort of very impressed. It's sort of simple, but somehow it's a very evocative sort of illustration.
Sure. Yeah, he was a good artist. He really was.
Gladstone Gander,
That's right. Yeah. First appearance of Lanston Gander.
the guy who got it whatever he wanted. With the downside is when you get whatever you want, you're a complete arsehole.
Well,
You never change your game.
yeah. Yeah. Is it a blessing or a curse?
Would you jump in the ice water for a house? I would.
Hmm.
I think the
Man,
Russians do it, don't they? They have the thing where they jump in the ice water in the middle of winter.
yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
Just downloading the first one.
Mhm.
Oh well, Daisy Duck saves the day.
Mhm. Right.
Oh, Donald looking for a job. I'll set the alarm for 11:30.
Mhm.
I'll work on my chemicals for a while.
Mhm.
Well, it sounds all right to me. I only have to turn the key once an hour. You could have a nap in between.
Well,
Yeah, this is the stupid part where they keep him awake. If they had to let him sleep for about half an hour, he'd probably be good for the rest of the night.
sure.
Okay, telegram delivery. I saw somebody sent a telegram to my dad once when I was a kid about a union strike, I think early 70s,
Hmm.
because my parents didn't have a telephone. First time I ever had a phone in my life was in 1984. I had one fitted to a place I was in.
Hmm.
Watch out for the rich and famous. Often they're pricks. So like Telegram Boys was only they were explaining that at the end was only big time before the or the yeah before the telephone showed up.
Look at that poster in the background.
All right, wrestling. Okay, interesting scene. They've gone to a bad part of town. Dreary Street. Angina arthritis. Okay, she likes that one. So it's an interesting looking character, Angina. What do you reckon?
Yeah. Shades of Lena Hyena.
I learned the truth at 17 that love was made for beauty queens. Remember that song?
I do.
Looks like she's been stuck at that stage for a long time. What was it?
Janician, right?
Sorry?
Janician, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if that was a name. Okay, I'll download the second one. $10. Just trying to think. So it's getting towards between 1950. Trying to think what wages in 1950. 40 cents an hour.
Right.
So 160. So sort of like $10 would be oh, nice little chunk of change.
Hmm.
Yeah, 1950, 40 cents an hour, if I remember correctly. In the US, that was a minimum wage. Okay, yeah, or $10 would be like half a week's wages.
Well,
Okay, he's pissed off the rich man. All right, I'm so glad that you were hired. We need your type of friskers. But I'm glad to tell you that you are fired. J. Morgan built gilt whiskers. I was never so insulted in all my life.
so they got $10 each.
$10 each, did they?
Well, it's not $10 split three ways.
Yeah, well, it's a large sum of money. $10 is probably about the weekly rent on an apartment.
Yeah. $10 split three ways is $3.33 and a third penny. You can't really do that.
Well, that's a day's wages for a junior. $3.30, I think. Okay, he's trying to get up the social ladder.
Just very fluid cartooning. Very confident. Knows exactly what he's doing.
Well, in the early 40s, apparently he bought a chicken farm when he got out of cardooning for a little while. But Donald Duck comics were pretty much big time when I was a kid. I mean, you'd walk into the local store and the rack always had Donald Ducks and Uncle Scrooges in them.
They're still huge in Europe.
In Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. Donald Duck comics sell millions in Italy and in Scandinavia.
And these are just the reprints, are they?
Oh, there's plenty of new material.
Oh, really?
They're cranking out new stuff. If we keep going, we'll get to them eventually. If we keep going. I said if. A surprising amount of it is good enough to be worth paying attention to.
Wow. So the minimum wage in Australia is like $24 an hour. Is that true?
In Australia, let me think now. 38 hours is the weekly standard. It's been that for 40 years, actually. Us people down the bottom were dreaming of shorter and shorter work weeks, and then it came to a halt in the 1980s. Let's see, 915 divided by 38. Yeah, $24 an hour these days. That's Australian dollars, which should be uh, equivalent to $16 an hour US.
Okay. So it would be if I was to go to Australia, things would be cheaper for me, right? With the
Uh,
exchange rate.
it would depend what. I think most things would be cheaper in the US. I mean, clothing, I believe, is cheaper. At the moment, things might change vastly with Emperor Trump. It's a bit like that guy down in Argentina, their new president down there. He's got large tariffs. Like the latest iPhone down in Argentina is about $2,500, whereas in the US you're paying about $800. Although he was successful with inflation. Inflation in Argentina has gone down to 2.7%, I think, which was way lower than where it was. It was huge at one stage. Okay, the alligators or crocodiles are back. In this case, it'd be crocodiles. Is there any difference between Barks, alligators, and crocodiles?
Mhm. Something about the cranium size or something like that. The width of the jaw or something.
Yeah, this does seem to suggest crocodiles. Actually, it's got sort of the narrower, sort of longer jaw.
Hmm.
Okay, coconuts. They're a Dr. Gumphrey recommendation. Coconuts.
Whenever you see one of those YouTube advertising doctors, what you do is you Google up critical reviews of that guy
Oh, okay.
and find what you can find. usually they'll set you straight. It's surprising how much YouTube commercials are just out and out scams.
Okay. Dr. Mike confronts Dr. Guntry's controversial health views. Eat your beans, but skip reading Dr. Stephen Gundry's. All right.
Yeah, I don't think they did a lot of reprinting of this particular story. I certainly never read it as a kid.
Yeah, I don't know if I could recall this one.
Yeah, they wouldn't reprint this one very often.
You think it lacks a bit? Okay, one of his shorts. Baseball hits dynamite cash. Breaks every window in city. Okay, how to deal with children.
Yeah,
A child psychologist.
yeah. Yeah, Barks had that kind of Midwestern skepticism of all the new fads the 20th century kept coming up with. Psychotherapy and various automations, and gadgets and stuff.
just checking out when Ariel reminded me of the Existential Society, and I was just checking the future meetings, and for some reason, George Gonzalez, he was going to do another meeting, but for some reason he's disappeared off it.
Hmm.
Well, this was the nature of the world back then, that people would have an adventure in the bathtub. I suppose George has been annoying David with the amount of rants George does at the meetings.
I'm not unhappy that I no longer attend any philosophy meetings. We've talked about that before. Very happy to no longer be attending philosophy meetings. I never went away from a philosophy meetup and said, well, that was a productive use of my time.
Well, there's the Kenneth Smith group.
The Kenneth Smith, Rick's very, very special. I mean, I'd go to plenty of philosophy meetings if Rick did all of them. But that's very rare to come across someone like Rick.
I like the bird bath. It's got an audience. This is that's a bit of that's the choir, isn't it? It's from the Greek play.
Yeah, Greek chorus. Just such elegant, charming cartooning. It's impossible not to be charmed by the art. And he was one of the best to ever do it.
Okay, you see shades of Scrooge McDuck in the nephews.
Mhm.
Oh, rocket race to the moon.
Yeah. He still had yet to invent gyro gear loose.
He created gyro, did he?
Well, that's coming up. But he would usually fill in for these parts when the scientist is needed.
Probably shades of the Bell rocket plane there, I suppose, without the wings. Okay, there's a nice one. He's the Earth is silhouette and his silhouette.
Hmm.
It's all the fuel I need to get home.
Sort of like that question, which would you rather fight? One horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
One, not many, one.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. 100 of anything is going to wear you down eventually, no matter what it is.
Okay, these professors look a bit out there. So hope nobody's taken my old corner.
Look at the background jars and barrels.
The
Stardust.
Sundust, dice beta rays, sunspots, ultraviolet rays, spiral nebula.
Yeah, Barks was pretty innocent of actual science, but certainly isn't necessary.
Okay, this was sort of an exotic one. Looks like California or Mexican coast, I suppose.
It's always an open question. Where exactly is Duckburg located? Because it's an impossible place. They always go to the beach, but clearly they're every Christmas it's snowing. So where is Duckburg? The answer is it's in California in the summers and it's in Minnesota in the winters.
Oh, well, there's an image that'd probably get the comic banned these days. Picking on the less well endowed faces in the community. Back in the sec, just go and grab a coffee. There's
Yeah.
a interesting, oh, that's right. They had the interesting image of the bathing suit girl.
Yeah, it's coming up.
He's always running into trouble with a walrus. Well, there's
Yeah.
one spy getting through.
He draws them like perfect humans except for the dog nose, which makes them still a dog person. But other than the dog nose, they're
Oh,
they're
that's quite a shot, I think.
yeah, they're perfect humans except for the dog nose. So they're still technically these dog people. But other than the nose, they're human.
Yeah, well, Donald Duck gets fooled by everybody. Okay, so
There's only a bare handful of funny animal cartoons or comics that ever bother to explain why different animal species live together. There's only a handful that even bother to explain that. Most of the time, it doesn't make any difference. As Mystery Science Theater used to say, don't worry about it. It's just a show. More Gladstone Gander. Look at the character animation. Just the way Barks would act his characters. Just delightful. Just puts you in a good mood looking at his really, really fine cartooning. And good character work. I mean, even if you didn't read English, if you were illiterate, you could still tell what was going on just by looking at the characters, just by looking at their faces. You read it perfectly. A child who's pre-literate can still read this. That's excellent cartooning. He draws every emotion just unmistakably. You can follow the psychology and the through line of every plot point.
$5.
And it's funny. It's funny. And that's not something you can fake. It's actually funny. Yeah, this is just excellent, excellent cartooning.
Property of Huey, Louie, and Dewey, hands off. Nerds to you, Uncle Donald. Oh, well, gets electrocuted.
Donald.
Misers, hoarders, Shylocks.
Donald is always just a reprehensible reprobate.
Gold bricks for sale.
Yeah, more Gladstone Gander. Yeah, we're heading into the period where Barks's fecundity of imagination is kicking into high gear, where he just starts creating these concepts and these characters, long running characters and established additions to the Donald Duck lore.
Donald, gold bricks for sale. Also, Brooklyn Bridge, $5.
He starts creating these characters that are just enduring characters like Scrooge and Gladstone and Gyro and the Beagle Boys and Magica Dispel, just one after another. These enduring creations that all came out of Barks's head, and he's kicking into high gear right around this time. And they're all good. They're still around today. And he created all of it. You know, it's like the thing with Batman. The only creator of Batman that gets credited is Bob Kane because he created Batman. Sure, he Bob Kane created Batman, but pretty much everything you think of when you think of Batman was created by a man named Bill Finger. Bob Kane created the character of Batman, but Bill Finger created the Joker, created the Batmobile, created Alfred the Butler, created the Batcave, created Gotham City. Pretty much every other thing about Batman other than Batman himself was created by Bill Finger. Bill Finger created Robin. Bill Finger created pretty much everything you think of when you think of Batman. But does he ever get credit? No, he never gets credit, even though he did most of the work on Batman.
Okay, so how did he go with Bob Crane? Did Bob Crane started it off, and then it was continued with Finger, was it?
What it basically comes down to is Kane had a better lawyer. He just negotiated a better deal. It's basically what it comes down to. It's gotten a little bit better. These days, Bill Finger gets a little bit more credit these days. But anyway, the same thing here. No, Karl Barks did not create Donald Duck, but he sure did create virtually everything that anybody ever thinks of when they think of Donald Duck. So that was my point.
Okay, died at 59.
Yeah, for a lot of years, it was just who created Batman? Bob Kane. Okay, what happened to Bill Finger? No, nobody ever mentions him. But he gets more mention these days, thankfully.
Okay, Finger wrote both the initial script for Batman's debut in Detective Comics 1939 and the character's second appearance in issue 28. So Detective Comics issue 27. So this is what Batman's debut, 1939.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Bob Kane created the character, but all the heart, the soul, the energy, the spirit that infused what was great about the strip was all Bill Finger. Yeah.
Well, I do recall they had the movie or maybe a movie serial in the late 40s based on Batman.
Yeah.
But he was just in an ordinary car. He had Robin with him.
Yeah.
They'll be driving along and they'll change into their costumes in the car. Okay, the Western adventure. You talk too dumb. Get off of my horse before I blow you off.
And even when just the characters are just standing around talking, it's always entertaining to just look at the art. Just keeps your interest. Just there's always these dog people characters.
Well, I suppose the dog men are the alpha males and Donald's a beta male.
Just by numbers, it does seem like there's more dog people than any other animal, but yeah,
Well, the dog people represents a concept, doesn't it? Another dog face.
yeah, there are a limited number of other animals. There's pig people every now and again.
Yeah, rightio. I have to keep an eye out for them.
There's various bird animal creatures, bird people. But yeah, mostly it's the dogs. Pegleg Pete is a cat. He pops in now and again.
Oh, rightio. Pig leg Pete. Right, he's a cat. Yeah, I sort of remember him.
Yeah.
Wasn't too sure what he was supposed to be.
No, he was a cat. Yeah.
Okay, there's an interesting one. The sunset there, or sunrise, red dawn. Okay.
Right.
So you got the nighttime there with the coyote and a rattlesnake and a vulture.
Yeah. I think evocative of the older 1920s cartooning, newspaper comic strip cartooning. Remember when we did Crazy Cat by George Herriman?
Yeah, it's a long time ago now.
It was, yeah.
Okay, he's throwing a grenade. A nice pair of bloomers.
Anybody
Right.
else catch that one? Right there.
Where have you got your?
No, nobody caught that. Right
Where
there.
are we?
That's the man himself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Carl Barks.
Oh,
Put
really? You
put
start.
his
Oh,
own
that's right.
put
Yeah,
his
it is
own
his
face.
image.
Yeah. I think he did that once or twice. I think a couple of other times he does something like that. Just goes ahead and draws himself into the proceedings. Which you would only know if you knew what he looked like, which nobody did. So he could get away with that. But that's him, yeah.
Simmer down, simmer down. Uncle Donna will take care of them right after the show. Sheriff. Okay, hours now and then.
The classic character falls out of the panel frame with their feet up in the air. Always a classic ending to the punchline. Hmm.
Okay, what happened to that bit of furniture there?
No one up there. I love the little paintings in the background.
What doing the Picasso of some proportion, are they? I suspect it looks like he wasn't too impressed with modern art.
Yeah, I think he probably was aware of modern art by this point. Yeah,
Oh, well,
Picasso.
modern art was big time in this era, that was the thing.
Sure.
But it looks like he thinks that this is the latest edition in Insanity. Because you look at Barks' own art and it's sort of classic, it's sort of it's going back to sort of the classic landscapes and that. So he didn't admire degenerate art.
Hmm.
This would be Phil. Phil's worships this garbage.
Well, that's a long debate. It's been long, long debated.
Stop calling that wig cabinet genuine. It's just full of woodpecker holes. The ducklings want to go fishing, and Donald wants to play golf. Yeah, well, golf has a lot of fanatical followers. I could probably see myself playing golf, I imagine.
Hmm.
It's a nice little jaunt around a greenery would be my thing, I suppose.
Hmm.
It's very, very difficult to find yourself a golf course unless you're prepared to go quite a distance.
Um,
or if you get something closer and you want to become a member, then you're in for high fees. $1 to see you make a hole in one. I should live that long.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, there you are. There's a what is it, a squirrel or a chipmunk? Squirrel, I suppose.
Hmm. Hmm.
The old soldiers trying to scare us away. Natalia is going to pick up her friends. They're going to go somewhere. And she's got a driver's license now, so she can pick people up.
Hmm.
Only took her 4 years. Oh, okay. So yeah, yes, prove that the duck family can fit in with high society. And he forgets the fox's name? Red herring. If I remember now, I think I checked up the term was connected with fox hunting, wasn't it?
Hmm.
So you could get the dogs to go the wrong way if you ran a herring or something through the grass. I can't spare the time to take the harness off. I'm leaving the country. I'm going to South America. What part of the States are you in, Ariel?
What was that?
Oh, I was wondering what part of the States are you in, Ariel?
East Coast, Maryland.
Oh, okay, cool.
Although I'm trying to move to North Carolina. Cheaper there. It's getting too expensive in Maryland.
Your Maryland's very close to Washington, isn't it?
It's a blue state, and they're trying to tax us on everything because they're $4 billion in debt.
So I was looking at this video about how America was originally colonized, and the guy was pointing out that there was sort of like about 4 different parts of England, and they were virtually different cultures. You had the wealthy landed gentry was very much southern and southwestern England, which had the richest land. And they were the ones who got the top jobs. Like, you know, if you wanted to be a bishop or a top job with the royalty. Huge heat wave. Oh, rightio. And then there were the East Anglicans who were the poorer farmers, and they wanted to rise in the world, but they had to find a way of getting there. And they tended to be the people that were in the public service that was expanding under the Tudors. And they tended to follow the Puritan doctrine within the Anglican Church. But they were people who were trying to find themselves a government job or something like that, virtue signalling. And they went to New England when the Puritans were persecuted, but during the era when the landed gentry were persecuted by the Puritans, they founded the colonies in America from Maryland right down to the well, I think what's southernmost state, Georgia, I think, something like that. And they they brought their culture of the landed gentry with them. And other parts of England were like the Midlands, and the Midlands were the places where people tried to make money, and they didn't like the interference of government too much. So the Puritans were very pro-government in, you know, having the government services, the government and everything. But the Midlanders were just capitalists trying to make money, and they were more New York and Pennsylvania going over to Ohio. And then there was more northern England, Northumbria, going to, so you had York and Lancashire going to the Scottish border, and they were the ones that migrated to the Appalachian Mountains, and they were people that just wanted to be left alone. They didn't trust government too much. So these different parts of England originally migrated to different parts of America, each preferring their own society, culture, and religious standards. But the modern Puritans, of course, are atheists, and they're the ones that don't tend to be that rich. They're the ones that try to get education and rise up in government services or whatever, and they like academic jobs. And so, for example, it was the East Anglicans who dominated England's early universities. And when they went to New England, that's where they built all the universities. That was their business, education. But they're the ones that you blame for government taxation, because that's their business. They work for the government. The more government taxation is, the more jobs for the latter day Puritan.
Wow. Yeah. I was kind of aware of that, but I didn't really know the history.
Yeah, it was a direct import from England in the 17th century. And whereas that cultural separation, or what was that culture, is sort of vanished in England a bit, it still survives in America. So Europe could advance. They sent all their troublemakers to America. Shakespeare's Hamlet. Okay. Donald of the Coast Patrol. Borderline hero in a later volume. Donald is a border patrol agent. Barks would alter gags and supportive characters for the borderline hero. Okay, so he'd recycle his stories. Donald of the Coast Patrol. And his nephews to deliver the smugglers to justice, although it is Donald who takes the credit and gets a promotion. Shakespeare's Hamlet did not appreciate the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes. It's getting a little bit too complicated for my modern brain, that one. It's one of the, of course, the mysteries that the moderns think that they're the smart ones. This is, of course, we come up with Kenneth Smith's group. But we dig out something like Shakespeare, and there's just a language brain which is just running rings about any contemporary. This is Shakespeare has a brain that's on fire. I think this was probably one of the great influences on Nietzsche, being a master of texts, that the decline in mental power in Western civilization from probably its heights at the end of the Middle Ages would have been for Nietzsche quite striking. Yeah, Hamlet's one of the all-time very powerful stories. Well, of course, you got the question of justice there, that Hamlet is being unjustly treated by the cheats. Okay, Gladstone returns. Okay, yeah, the wintertime wager. Okay, that's something which is going to appeal to a young kid more than, say, an adult. It's more domestic. How did you happen to be swimming out there, miss? I fell off a passing yacht, kind sir. So Donald is duped again. Well, looking at wages, once an ounce of gold was about $21 US. Then it went up to $35 US. Now it's getting up to 3,500 US. So gold is now 100 times the price of the 30s fix. And in the gold story is a magnificent example of there's something highly crooked going on in the world. For example, the American minimum wage in 1970 was equivalent to an ounce of gold. So the American minimum wage in 1970 was equivalent to about $3,500 a week. Americans are hardly fatalists, yet empirical evidence shows that good and bad luck often play a very important role in life. It is possible to reconcile the arrows of fate with the gospel of the individual effort. Well, there's Hamlet again, you know. What is it? Give in to the outrageous slings and arrows of fortune. Okay, Donald ends up an unlucky loser. Okay, Karl Barks, 1982. Okay, you must have seen him at a Comic Con at some point, did you, or David?
I've seen pictures of him before.
Right, you weren't old enough to hit the Comic Cons where he'd actually shown up, so maybe the 1982 was one of the last ones he went to. Okay, looks like he's got a bit of a red nose there.
I think my first time I went to San Diego Con was 85.
So you just missed out.
Yeah, maybe I did. Yeah.
His first marriage in 1921 was to a woman who was unsympathetic to his dreams and who ultimately bore two children by accident, as Barks phrased it. The two divorced in 1930. He had another wife where it sort of didn't end up so great, and then his third wife, it was pretty good. It was, this is Schopenhauer's line that most people will pick a less than happy partner. Okay, what's this? On those occasions when he did go, uh, on those occasions when he did go into Weston's offices, he would just dare anybody to see if they could improve on it. His confidence was justified. His work was largely responsible for some of the best selling comic books in the world. Walt Disney's comics and stories and Uncle Scrooge. Because Weston's policy was to keep their writers and artists anonymous, readers never knew the name of the good duck artist. But they could spot the superiority of his work when fans determined to solve the mystery of his anonymity finally tracked him down, not like any other an adventure Huey, Dewey and Louie might embark upon. Banks was quite happy to correspond and even communicate with his legion of affiendos. Given all the obstacles of his early years and the dark days that haunted him off and on for the rest of his life, it's remarkable that he laughed so easily and loved to make others laugh. In the process of expanding Donald Duck's character, he went far beyond the hot-tempered Donald of animation. Barks created a movable locale duckbird and a cast of dynamic characters. Well, yes, the original Duck in the cartoons was just crazy, wasn't he? There were virtually no moments of rationale in the cartoon Duck. But yes, the Donald Duck of the comics was a far more sober character than the complete madman in the cartoons. The process of expanding Donald Duck's character far beyond the hot temper, right? Bucks and a cast of dynamic characters, okay. Scrooge McDuck, the Beagle Boys, Gladstone, Gander, Gyro, Gearloose, and the Junior Woodchucks. Well, Barks became the only Disney comic book artist to be recognised as a Disney legend. So, Ariel, did you ever get into the Donald Duck comics at all when you were younger?
I watched the cartoons on Disney that came on when I was younger, but I think my brother was more into the comics. I don't know. I don't recall him having Donald Duck, but he had all those other ones. Superman, Batman, which I used to look at occasionally. Avengers, all that stuff.
I remember where my mother's workplace, the men's room had a lot of comic books in there. Superman, I was looking through quite a bit. Yeah, but I think I sort of got into the Donald Ducks at an early age and got through quite a few of them as a kid. I suppose it was the adventure characteristic, very much a kid's sort of adventure. Barks would, mix in certain sorts of technical details, the nature of aircraft and various other things, which were, sort of in the kid style imagination. So Barks, yeah, he's a person who could pick up on what a kid's imagination liked. So it sounds like the guy never grew up quite. Oh well, the taxes are too high in Maryland. As they are running into trouble. They used to get out of it because credit was so cheap for a long time, but now interest rates are rising and they're not going where they should. If they want to keep the currency stable, they really need interest rates of like about 10%. But they've stopped at 5% because they can't live with the consequences. It's like one thing I knew about Donald Trump is he's not adverse to big spending. And Elon was unfortunately a purist. But I knew that from the past. I knew that when Trump back in 2020, I think it was screaming for the Fed to adopt negative interest rates like they had done in Europe. This is not. This demonstrates no ideological commitment for sound money. Well, Maryland's only a small state. I remember I found somebody who was connected, did one of those DNA tests and, you got the DNA of the Y chromosome. So I noticed a close relative to mine was in Maryland back in the 17th century. But I haven't gone into detail. I think you can do it more, but say the separation between lines might have gone back to about 500 AD, something like that. He was kidnapped in London, I think it was, or kidnapped in England somewhere, shanghaied, to America, and he escaped to Maryland and lived out his days in Maryland.
Wow, that's a really cool story. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's just if this particular family traced the DNA, and he and I would have had a common male ancestor around 500 AD.
From England.
Yeah, actually, I'm not too sure where. I'm not too sure. I know this. I
Well, no,
know.
it wouldn't have been England in 500 AD, right? It would have been, um,
Yeah, I haven't checked that part out actually. My ancestral male DNA seems to originate going back. I think going back in the pre-Christian times originates around the area of Thuringia in Germany, which
yes,
is
and it wasn't Germany then. It was,
yeah, well, German tribes, yeah.
yeah, they were German tribes. So probably, whereabouts on the continent, or I mean, most of Europe was German.
Thuringia, oddly enough, is where Weimar is. So I was certainly within the whatever ran for elite intellectuals in
Where,
Germany.
where?
Weimar is a famous university in
Okay.
Germany. That's where Goethe, I think Goethe was living there. Theoretically, Goethe was the person with the highest IQ in history, which could be bunkum, but they theorised Goethe had an IQ of about 210. Documents. Right. Mm.
It may have been the Franks. I don't know. Okay. I had a book on all the different tribes.
Oh, you mean German tribes?
Yeah, so there's the Franks and oh gosh, I used to have all and knew of course.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of German immigration to the States because
Yeah.
when England was sort of at its height, there were a lot of those minor German states that were connected with the English crown. Of course, famously, the English crown employed Hessian troops against the American revolutionaries. And they were thinking of making German the official language of the United States.
Oh, right. The Franks were in Gaul, which is modern day France. So, see, there was the Goths, and of that was the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths, East and West Goths. I wonder if this is where we get Gothic.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's an interesting story, actually. But what happened is they called these tribesmen Germans, which was something Caesar learns from the Gauls. And German simply means those across the divides, meaning the Rhine. So those on the other side of the Rhine, the Gauls called Germans, which wasn't a name they called themselves. We do have Deutsch, the people, which certainly they would have used. Another name they were given was Teutons, which was some particular small tribe living beyond the Rhine. But it was the Byzantines, the Eastern Romans in the 5th century. There was a scholar who went to a colony of Goths in the Crimea, which had survived the Hunnic invasion. And the guy was explaining to him that the word Goth was not their particular tribe, that Goth meant the entire people. And Goth meant people who followed the same religions. For example, if you had a religion which mentioned the god called Odin, then you're a part of the Gothic religion. And so the Eastern Romans got this term Goth, which got into the papacy. So the papacy started using the term Goth. And when they used the term Eastern Goths and Western Goths, they simply meant the Germans that were to the east and the Germans that were to the west in Southern Europe at the time. So it wasn't actually the name of their tribes, but Goth was a generic name for the entire group. So properly speaking, using terms Germanic and Teutonic, it would be more accurate to call them Goths, since that was the one unifying feature.
Well, it wouldn't have been the Lombards because they're migrated into Italy. And of course, there's the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, which conquered, well, they settled in Britain, right? Called the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, the Goths that invaded Italy, the largest contingent, there were twice as many Saxons as there were Lombards in the invading army.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, all that coastline from Holland to under Jutland could have really good eras and bad eras. And during the good eras, it would produce a tremendous population. And then the whole region would suffer from floods for years, and that would result in the population having to leave en masse. And it was from this region you're getting this expanding population. They would disappear as refugees in a bad season. Of course, when you hear these names, at the very best, like the Lombards, the only real Lombards would have been the aristocracy at best. But the guys down the bottom could be anybody. You know, they they didn't bother with how would you say heraldry for peasants. You could join if you're a peasant. You went and joined whoever who was paying the best. Yeah, there were no pure tribes. At the very best, only the aristocracy was pure. I think actually they're doing a study on the Goths, as they call them. I think the Visigoths, and they're pointing out that you find it's in the aristocracy that there's some degree of a pure Y chromosome DNA, but you look at the bottom of the population, they were everybody and anybody. The Lombards that invaded Italy also included people of the most foreign ethnicity, like Huns. Even a few Huns joined them. But you know, people they had this idea, oh, this Frankish tribe, the whole caboodle has to be this pure genetic group, and no, they didn't operate. Only the nobles would boast of having a pure ancestry. Yeah, so I had the Y chromosome tested by a few different groups, got a little bit detailed. I could go and do it again with a particular service and get even greater haplo. Okay, there it is. Which is all a bit silly, I suppose, because I mean, genetically, you only have to go back a few centuries and you got like a 1,000 ancestors. So if you're claiming down one particular line, well, it's although it can be a bit interesting if you're a male, you can go down your Y chromosome, which is distinctly passed on from each male, and the female, you can go down the mitochondrial DNA, which is strictly passed on from mother to daughter. Yeah, well, I treat this stuff a bit like tarot cards, actually. I remember when they were throwing the Scottish peasants off the lands, about over 200 years ago. They're justifying it and saying, well, us Anglos, which have come to claim the land, are the advanced type of man. And the Scots are just these backward Celts. But of course, if you genetically analyse people, they're all a mixture. They seem to have this idea that when the Anglo-Saxons invaded a place like England, that they just exterminated the original population. But that's not the case. They took over the land, and most of the original population simply became labour. In most of England, only a quarter of the male DNA is Germanic. 3/4 is the original British population prior to the Anglo-Saxons. The only difference is Yorkshire is slightly over half Germanic due to the second invasion of the Vikings. Where's it?
It reminds me of He-Man. Or not He-Man. Not He-Man. Well, sort of. But no, Conan the Barbarian. Yeah. I think about those kind of like warring times. I think about those barbarian movies that Arnold Schwarzenegger did. Do they have comics on that?
Yeah, they do Conan the Barbarian, yeah. I never got into Conan. I remember in the science fiction club 40 years ago, there were quite a few fans of Conan. They were reading the books. I actually preferred one called Brak the Barbarian. I mean, Conan was just so over the top, Brak was a bit more reasonable.
What's the name again? I'm
Brak
sorry.
the Barbarian.
Ah, Dracula.
Brak, yeah. Oh,
Breck. With a B? Or
B-R-A.
yeah, put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it. Oh, okay, yeah, B-R-A-K. My mother gave me the books. There was some friend at work who was throwing books out, and she gave me Brak the Barbarian, which I quite enjoyed, actually. There were only about 3 books when I was a kid, but he wrote some more later on. I found them quite digestible, Brak the Barbarian.
And then, of course, there was the Australian TV series. There probably was a movie too. What was the female equivalent? Was oh, why can't I think of her name?
Zana, was it?
Yeah, it began with a Z or an X or something.
Yeah, it's
Xena.
played by sort of a Australian woman who was a bit sort of strongly built, Lucy Lawless.
That's it. And she was in Battlestar Galactica. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She was a product of a mining town.
Really?
Yeah, she came from some sort of mining town, I think. I'll look that up. So what do you think of the remake of Battlestar Galactica?
I have not seen the remake. Where is it? Because I really want to see it. I didn't know it was out.
That was the one that they had about 20 years ago.
Oh, well, no, they're remaking it again. I thought you were talking
Uh,
about the
are
really
they?
new one. Last I heard, it was in production. I think it's gonna be out 26. I'm not sure. But yeah, the remake was definitely needed because the original one was so dated, from the 70s. But I
The one
still
with
loved it.
Lawn Green in it.
Yeah, it had a lot of really famous people and Rick Springfield, the singer actor, and I mean I love the 71 because it's kind of true to that period, but
You know how far I lived from Rick Springfield when I was a kid?
how far?
2 doors down.
Oh my God, you're so lucky.
Oh, I
I
knew his
loved his
dad.
music. I loved his music. He was big in America. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I knew his dad. He's The kids would go around to his dad's place. His dad used to be an army man, so he had a lot of interesting stuff in his shed. But I didn't see much of Rick or his brother. One day I did. I think could have been 1969. Rick and his brother came around to help his dad clean up the garden. And I don't think he was particularly tall. Can't remember that bit because I was only a little kid, but he was as skinny as a rat. That was the thing that shocked me. Him, I think his brother as well, were both as skinny as rats.
The only Australian I ever met, he was in a military family, and they lived over near me when I was a little girl. And this is a great story. Which is what this is probably why I've always liked Australians and wanted to go to Australia, is because this guy saved my dog. Um, the river had iced over near my house, and the dog's name was Troubles. So that kind of he fetched Stick so well. He would even go out on the ice after Stick and chase it. And when he went in the ice, he fell in and was struggling. And Morley went out and grabbed the I was struggling. I almost fell in. He pushed me back and grabbed the dog and pulled him out. He was, of course, a lot older than me. He was like 14, 15 years old. But yeah, all the girls in the neighborhood had a crush on him, obviously. But yeah, I was about what, 7, 8? I don't know. Yeah, he saved my dog, so he was my hero for a long time. His name was Morley. I can't remember what his last name was. But they moved because, they were in the military.
Yeah, he's got one on YouTube where he lamented his dad's death. As his dad was one of those characters, not a madman, but very imaginative, but also very disciplined. Oh, I had no idea who he was. My mother was getting a taxi home one night, and the taxi driver said, "Oh, that's you living just down from Rick Springfield." I think that name's not quite the same as his dad's. He changed it slightly. But wait a minute, Rick Springfield was in General Hospital, wasn't he?
Yes. Yes, he was. I was trying to think of all the hits he had. It was Jesse's Girl, and there was another one. Can't think of the name. But yeah, he was in soap opera, and of course we all know he was in Battlestar Galactica. I don't know what else he was in. It seems like he was in some commercials too.
Oh, that's you.
You'll probably like this one. So this is one, there might be one or two videos where he's lamenting the death of his father. They had a big sort of block party for him a few years ago, but I didn't know about it. Last time I saw him, he was just walking up and down the road smoking, and he didn't look too happy. I think it was probably around 1974 or something like that, mid-70s. It's just, looking very, very, his eyes were just looking around like, he was suffering from some sort of internal bleakness.
Maybe he felt stifled. He's an artist. They go through those,
Yeah, but his dad was just one of those really striking personalities. I didn't know he was, connected with the singer, but yeah, mother wasn't very friendly. When we were kids, you'd play that game where you'd go and knock on somebody's door and ask if there's some kid living there, and there's nobody living there. So we did that on the mother, and the totally freaked out look on her face. You probably enjoy that one, My Father's Chair. So yeah, where he's lamenting his father. So his father, yeah, must have died in 81. So it was about 12 years after I was hanging around the dead. He used to have a German helmet, which he'd spray painted silver, and just hurt my head when I put it on. He loved collecting those little die-cast cars. Yeah, I haven't seen that many Rick Springfield fans.
Yeah, I did a presentation on Battlestar Galactica. And the cycle of violence. And unfortunately, I presented it to the wrong people. I presented it to Phil and George Gonzalez, and I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time on that presentation. It was really good. I was told I presented it to some other people in person, and they were like, "That's good. That's a really good interpretation, very present day."
Well, look, George Gonzalez would have said they're fascists.
Oh, he pissed all over it. I mean, him and Phil both pissed all over it. I was so disgusted, especially just mostly disgusted with myself for spending all that much time and presenting it to them, because that was a lot of work.
Have you ever seen a British show? It was BBC, and it was done around the same time that they were doing the Doctor Who's, and its sets are on the level of Doctor Who, but it's my favourite show. You ever heard of Blake Seven?
No, Blade 7? Like,
Blake's Seven.
oh,
Yeah, I think it's probably, I prefer it to original Star Trek, although original Star Trek runs very close.
Okay, give me a link.
I can give you the Wikipedia. I
Okay.
think they've got the episodes on Daily Motion. Do you get Daily Motion?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, we get it. I can.
Yeah, well, they've got a, let's see, we've got a Wikipedia link.
Although what's the place I always go for updates on Star Trek? And it's it's like an entertainment feed.
I think you would love it. It's really a show that you have to watch in sequence, so it's not like Star Trek where you can almost jump to any episode and it wouldn't make any difference. I think what it was created by the guy that created Doctor Who and the Daleks.
Yeah, I gotta get around to watching Doctor Who. Doctor Who.
Oh, the early ones were interesting. I hate the later ones, but
Yeah, I do. I have a friend of mine that's crazy about Doctor Who.
yeah,
Gotta watch
but
it.
like everybody, he robbed ideas, and where I think he got the idea for Blake Seven, you remember there was a Star Trek episode where there was like a fascist federation. They had a transporter accident, and you had an alternate universe. They encountered an evil Spock. Mirror, that was the name of it. You don't remember that episode out of the original series?
That title sounds very familiar. It's been a while since I've watched Star Trek stuff, but
Oh yeah, it's they're negotiating with these this sort of backward planet for their, what do they call them, the dilithium crystals.
uh-huh.
And the primitives say, of course, if we don't like the idea of, giving minerals that can be used for warfare. And Kirk says, well, we'll await your decision. And he said, and the primitive aliens say, well, you could just take them by force, couldn't you? And he said, oh, we don't do that in the Federation. So he beams up, and there's a thunderstorm going on, and I think it's Kirk, Uhura, and Bones end up going into an alternate universe where the Federation is fascist. He ends up and Spock's there, and he said, well, it's no good, Spock. They wouldn't agree. And Spock says, oh, we'll do the standard totally blow the planet to bits routine, won't we? And it's a culture in where everybody's assassinating everybody. So it's so thoroughly Mussolini. It's sort of like living in a Mussolini universe, only a bit worse. And I think Terry Nation must have seen that episode and thought, what if I make a story with a federation which is just totally evil, and we have a gang of revolutionaries who's fighting against them? But I reckon you'll love Blake Seven if you can get past the bad sets and special effects.
Okay.
And probably if you get up to about episode 6, you'll love episode 6 of the first season. I'll give you that one. You'll enjoy that one. That's a very good intro. That's actually the one which I watched. It got me hooked on the show. Actually, there's a few different versions. A few different people have put Blake Seven, so you can check around for another copy of it if this one isn't so great, but the quality's a bit limited. Uh, Did you ever watch the original version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the BBC production?
Yes, that was. It's been a while since I've seen that, but I saw it on when we had cable, the original cable out here. They had that on, was it HBO? I think on certain nights.
I've got the DVD somewhere. I haven't watched it for a while.
I gotta watch that again because I remembered I really liked it. Oh, that's the, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm getting it confused with something else. So there was a television series called um something similar to that, and I don't think that was the same. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I've read it, and also the movie, I've seen it. The British, yeah, it's a British movie, right?
Yeah, I didn't think much of the movie, but the TV series they did in the early 80s I thought was quite outstanding. There was one where they land on this spaceship and the Ford prefect is going, "Oh, the catering here is great. You know, they got the hoopiest food in the universe. Eat this and your mouth will love you for the rest of your life." And I reckon if you watch this episode of Blake 7, if I think I've got you right, your brain will love you for the rest of your life. Okay, better let David go to sleep. We've ran over time. I'll probably you might see you at the Existentialist serial.
Oh, okay. Oh, and by the way, that television series was called The Hitchhiker. It was on, I think in the 80s or the 90s. It was kind of like, I think it was horror, kind of thriller horror kind of thing.
Well, there was a horror movie, I think, called The Hitchhiker, which had that guy out of Blade Runner in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to see that again too. Yeah, that's what I first thought of was this. There was a series on that was kind of like a scary series, and I think it was called The Hitchhiker. But you're right, there was also that was a movie, right?
Yeah,
Also.
yeah. What was his name? Rutger Hauer played the psycho.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, see you next time. Thanks a lot, Dave. Catch you
Yep.
next time.
See you
Okay.
later.
Bye, everyone.